Hello everyone and welcome to our Facebook live stream. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm streaming from today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and extend that respect and acknowledgement to all traditional lands across Australia. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So thank you for joining us for our monthly Facebook live stream. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of foster care, what's involved, the process and things like that. Feel free to pop any questions you might have in the chat and hopefully I'll be able to answer those for you today. But if we don't get to the specific questions that you have or particular areas that you're interested in learning more about, please feel free to give us a call after the live stream on 1800 013 088. My name is Jasmine and I'm a member of the Fostering Connections team, and Fostering Connections is a statewide foster care recruitment and attraction service for foster carers in Victoria. So my job is to answer the phone and talk with you about your personal circumstances and answer any questions you might have, and then put you in touch with a local foster care agency to start your foster care journey. We know that it takes a village to raise children, and so today I'm excited to share with you how you can become a foster carer and form part of that village for our children. So as I said, Fostering Connections is the Victorian statewide recruitment service, and we're run out of the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare in Melbourne. We're the peak body for children and family services in Victoria. And Fostering Connections provides support and information for prospective foster carers, as well as public education about foster care, which is what we're here for today. Anyone can call Fostering Connections, or you can visit our website and receive information or get in touch with a foster care agency that way. And it doesn't matter if you're at the start of your journey and really full of questions and wanting to learn more, or if you're ready to get started and be referred to an agency to start that process. So we're here for everybody in the community. I've worked in foster care recruitment for over 3 years now, working directly with prospective and accredited foster carers. And now at Fostering Connections, I help people figure out if foster care is right for them and let you know what the next steps are to help you with that process. So let's start at the beginning. That's always a good place to begin. So what is foster care? We still get asked this question a lot, and that's okay. So there is a bit of a difference between foster care and adoption in Victoria. Foster care is the temporary care of children and young people by members of the community who have been trained and accredited as foster carers. Foster care is about looking after and supporting vulnerable children and young people between the ages of 0 to 18 who are unable to live at home for a number of reasons or with other family members. So in most cases, when a child or young person first comes into foster care, the aim is to support their family or their parents to be able to have that child or young person returned to them as soon as it's safe and possible for them to do so. Our foster carers play a key role in supporting them to return back to their family, and it's really important to note that for most children and young people in care, they will eventually return home to family members. So in Victoria, there's approximately 11,000 Victorian young children and young people in the out-of-home care system, and that includes residential care and kinship care. So on any given night, there's usually about 1,500 children and young people in foster care, and those numbers are as of 2019. Foster care can last for a couple of days, it can last up to a couple of years, and any number of time or any amount of time in between there as well. So when you sign up to become a foster carer, and we'll talk about the different types of care that you can provide shortly, you can sign up for as little as 1 weekend a month if that's all you can commit to, all the way through to long-term foster care, which is what a lot of people imagine when we talk about foster care. So really up to you whether you've got weekends or you can do a couple of weeks at a time, or you are able to commit for that long-term care as well. Who are the children in foster care? Children in foster care are likely to have faced challenges, so we all understand what that might look like for our most vulnerable children and young people. But at the end of the day, they're just like other children. It's important that foster carers approach fostering with an open heart and a willingness to try and understand our kids' needs and where they're coming from. And a good way I like to think about this is not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. So Really important that our foster carers can keep that in mind when thinking about the types of children that are in care. And that can mean at times that you might experience different behavioural challenges or emotional challenges that you might not have experienced with your own kids if you have experience as a parent. But your agencies will be there to support you in providing the best care you can to those children. So we'll talk about that more again in a moment. Who can become a foster carer? Most people in our community are eligible to become a foster carer. If you're single, partnered, if you live in a share house, if you live with other adults, if you are working full-time or not working at all, or if you work some variation in the middle there, as long as you have a spare bedroom and a willingness to learn and desire to support or change a young person's life, then you've probably got what it takes to be a foster carer. Our foster carers come from all backgrounds and all life stages. We have wonderful foster carers who are single, in a couple, have families of their own, same-sex couples. All types of families are needed for all types of kids. And so it's really important that if you are unsure about your eligibility or whether your family structure would work for fostering, that you would just ask the questions, because you don't know what you don't know. Really important for us at Fostering Connections to be advocating for cultural matching for children in foster care. So if you come from a background that's not Australian, then you absolutely can become a foster carer. As long as you have permanent residency or citizenship and the right to work and live in Australia, then you can be eligible to become a foster carer. And that's really important for some of our kids from different cultural backgrounds, so that we can place them in settings that look and feel as close to home for them as possible, and can help to support their cultural identity as well. Connecting a child or young person with a carer from the same cultural background can help them grow up to be proud and strong within their identity, and that includes First Nations children and young people as well. Excuse me. As I said, I can see a few people are joining on the joining us today. If you do have any questions, feel free to comment them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them for you today as well. So let's talk about how to become a foster carer. So when you first call us up at Fostering Connections, usually I like to have a bit of a chat and ask about your family circumstances and the way that your household looks, just to help to understand what fostering might look like for you. Then usually people have questions, and I'm happy to answer those in as much depth or as little depth as works for you, or we can provide resources and information to help you find out more on our website or in other places. Once you decide that you are ready to get started as a foster carer, we will put you in touch with a local foster care agency in your area. And foster care agencies are very place-based. So if you live in regional Victoria, there will be a local service that works for your community within your community, and the same in metro areas as well. So we'll put you in touch with a local foster care agency, and they'll start that process with you. So what does that process look like? It starts with, as I said, some initial screening conversations on the phone, where they'll just get to know you and a bit more about why you want to become a foster carer. They'll provide you with more information about what's involved in fostering and what that might look like for your family. And then they'll get the ball rolling with the first information session. So sometimes that's one-on-one in your home, and other times that's with a group. But just an opportunity for the agency to learn more about you, and for you to learn about the agency as well. After that, you'll commence your foundational foster care training, where you'll learn about all of the aspects of fostering from the very first phone call about a placement, the reasons that children come into care and what they might need from foster carers, and some of the things that you might experience along the way within placements. So when a child is with you, how foster carers can manage behaviour, respond appropriately to our kids' stories, promote their identity, whether that's their cultural identity, their familial identity, or just who they are as a person. If we've got a young person who's really interested in football or arts or things like that, we want our carers to be able to support them to stay true to who they are and build that really strong identity in themselves as well. We also cover off things like the grief and loss at the end of a placement. It's really common for people to say, I would love to foster, but I'm not sure how I would feel at the end. And that's okay, that's really common. We want our carers to understand that there are lots and lots of supports available to you. And once you understand a bit more about fostering and the goals that we have for children in care to keep them safe, most people can understand that even if they might not be happy about a child leaving their home, there's usually lots of supports and ways that they can cope with that loss for themselves as well. After that training, then you will start some paperwork. So of course we have lots of checks and things we need to do for foster carers in Victoria. Those include a working with children check, a police check, and a health check. So get your GP to sign off and make sure that you're fit and healthy. We'll also ask you to do a number of other tasks, including writing your life story, so we can understand what you've been through throughout your life and if there's any areas that might need to be explored throughout your assessment, and of course things like your application forms and all of that good paperwork. After all of that comes back, if there's no red flags that come up out of that paperwork, then you'll start your formal assessment process. And that usually is 4 interviews in your home, where they'll talk to you, a qualified assessor will talk to you about how you work within a team, how you deal with stress, as well as some of the things we talked about in training, so maintaining a child's identity, behaviour management, things like that as well. So that process usually takes about 6 months from the very first phone call right through to when you are accredited. For some families it might be a little bit longer. If you're really busy and you're working full time and things like that, that might make it a little bit longer. But for most people we say around the 6-month mark until you're accredited. Throughout that process, the agency, as I said, is working really, really closely with you to get to know who you are and what your family might need to support a placement. And for every family that's going to look different. So some families, they might have 2 carers that both work full time, whereas others might have a stay-at-home caregiver who can balance or juggle things a little bit differently. So we're really looking to make sure we understand how best we can support you as carers to support our kids. Excuse me. So as I said, your agency will get to know you super, super well through that process. And it's really important that they're understanding whether you're at the stage where you're ready to take on a placement. So I promise we won't start you in foster care if you're not quite ready yet. And if there are areas that we think you need to work on or things that might help you get better prepared, then your agency will talk to you about that and make sure that that you're able to take those steps to get ready. That support continues once a child is in your care as well. So every foster care agency is different, but they will all offer similar types of support. So that includes 24-hour on-call support. So at any time of day, there is somebody that you can call to pick up the phone, whether it's an emergency or you need a chance to debrief or you need to ask questions. People have lots of questions and that's okay. There's always someone on the other end of that phone line who can pick up and talk you through things. You will also have an assigned case manager who can help you with the day-to-day caring tasks that are involved, but again, also to provide that emotional support and debriefing with you. So there's always somebody in your corner from that agency as well. There are other supports such as training, social activities, and whatever that support might look like for you, whether it's helping with transport or it's helping with administrative stuff, or if it is training needs or social activities and chances for you to connect with other carers, all of those are offered by all of our Victorian foster care agencies. So they're there to help you to help our kids. People often ask, as I mentioned before, you can sign up for just short-term stays, so weekends or longer, and that's usually the first question I get asked is, how long do foster care placements last? It's really important that people understand we're talking about human beings, we're talking about people and kids, and so things can change and evolve. So the amount of time that a placement will last will always be communicated to you, but it's not as simple as saying foster care lasts for X amount of time. As I said, there are different types of foster care, so we usually start with emergency foster care, where a child or young person requires immediate care due to concerns for their safety. And that's usually what people think of when they might get a phone call in the middle of the night to say, can you look after this young person today? And you can say, yes, I can, for up to a week or up to 3 weeks, or we'll see how things go. So you can put that amount of time around it for what will work for you. Then we have short-term and long-term care. So short-term is for children and young people who might require care overnight to up to about 6 months. And usually children who are in short-term foster care, the plan is for them to be reunified with their family or parents in most cases. So usually when that happens, there'll be tasks that the parents are working alongside the department with to make sure they're upskilling and doing what they need to do to have their children return to them. But there'll also be lots of family contact in that time so our kids can stay connected to their families. When it becomes long-term care, usually that is when a child or young person cannot return home to their families for quite some time. And long-term foster care might cease when there's a permanent care order organised or when that child reaches adulthood and independence. And finally, we have respite care, which is usually for children who are in a stable short-term or long-term foster care placement. But for whatever reason, a weekend break can be really helpful for the child or the carers or both. I like to think of that as similar to an auntie or an uncle or a grandparent who might be available to have a bit of a sleepover for a weekend to give parents a chance to recharge, for the kids to have a break and have a bit of an adventure at somebody else's house for a weekend and things like that. So if you sign up for respite care, you'll often be asked to care. Usually we'd like for that to be the same carer ongoing so that our kids can form a bit of a relationship with that person. And that might be one weekend a month. Ongoing, it might be for a week over the school holidays or things like that. And with respite care, there's usually a lot of planning in place. So we know a bit about that child and their family, their likes, their dislikes, their routines, and all of that good stuff as well. So that can be a really great place to start if you're not sure how fostering will fit in with your family. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer today about foster care and what's involved? It doesn't look like any are coming through. I might quickly run through some of the common myths or questions that I'm asked about a lot. And so people, as I mentioned, you can become a foster carer if you work part-time or full-time. And it's often a myth that people have that they couldn't become a foster carer because they don't have that time. And that's fair enough, but you can become a foster carer if you work full-time or part-time. Some of our kids will need a full-time stay-at-home carer, particularly for babies or children under 5. But you can talk to your agency about the type of care that would be suited to your circumstances and work commitments. And if those circumstances change, you can talk to your agency about that too. So if you work full-time from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and you would need supports to help with transport or after-school care or things like that, then your agency will talk to you about what supports could help keep that placement in place. But it's all about understanding what your limits are and what you are able to provide as well. People often ask about whether they need to be in a relationship or have children of their own to be a foster carer, and the answer is absolutely not. We need all kinds of carers for all kinds of kids, and as you can imagine, for some kids, for example, a single young professional might be a much better fit than, say, a big, noisy family. And so we need carers from all walks of life to be able to fill those gaps for our kids. You can be a foster carer if you're married, single, de facto, if you're in a same-sex relationship, or if you have children of your own. And if you don't have parenting experience, then your agency will talk to you about building that up as you become a foster carer, so through that assessment process. We'll always ask about your experience with children just to make sure that you understand the needs of day-to-day care for kids, but you certainly don't have to have children of your own. On the flip side to that, I'm often asked how foster care will be affected by having your own children in the home. And naturally we do take into consideration how fostering might affect other kids in your household as well. So we'll talk to you in depth about your children's understanding of foster care, whether they're 3 or 13, that's going to be very different for different age groups. But some of our kids will really benefit from having other kids in the household, and some will, as I said before, benefit from having a more quieter or less stimulating household environment. Our kids and young people in care can have more complex needs that require time and attention, and so that can affect what placements might be appropriate to you if you do have young kids in your home, or if your children have complex needs themselves. So your agency will talk to you about that in depth, and of course every situation and all circumstances are different. People often ask about what the needs of our kids will be, and a common myth that we hear is that children and young people in care can be too challenging. As I mentioned earlier, our kids are likely to have faced challenges, but they're also just like any other kid. It's really important that people approach fostering with an idea of trauma-informed care, as we call it, to make sure that you understand that there are different experiences that might affect children and young people's behaviour. In saying all of that though, children in care are not too challenging. That's a common myth we see in the media and out in pop culture, but as I said, our kids are just like all other kids. Some people ask me, how much of a difference could I really make if I just sign up to emergency or respite care? And the fact of the matter is that a stable and safe place for a child for a shorter time as that is can be a really important part of their story. Whether that's just for a weekend or a week here or there, your care could be crucial in supporting a child and family through difficulty, whether, as I said, that's a day or a weekend or up to a few years. So definitely all foster carers can make an important difference in children and young people's lives. Can you choose the age of children and young people that you care for? Absolutely. So foster care is for children 0 to 18, and that includes obviously newborn babies up to adulthood. If you are interested in caring for a particular age group, that is absolutely appropriate and you can do that. So for some people who might have maybe more experience with, say, primary school age kids, or if you've got children of your own at home, some people will say we'll go younger than them. Some people don't work or they work from home, and so having a child 0 to 5 is going to be a really good fit for them, whereas for other people maybe a more mentoring approach to fostering would work well, and so teenagers might be a better fit for them. So when you go through your assessment process, you'll be asked multiple times what age group of children you'd like to care for, and that can of course change depending on your interest and your experience level, and it can change with your circumstances over time. So many people will say younger than their youngest, keep that birth order and help their kids feel like they're a part of it, so that age range can change. You'll be accredited to care for the ages of children and young people that's most appropriate to you. But for most people that will be fully 0 to 18. Your agency will want to match you with a child who is a good fit for your family, but sometimes it's worth noting that the more specific you are, the longer it might take for a child to be suited for your circumstances to need care, and so it might take longer to find an appropriate match. So just something to keep in mind there. You can always say no to a placement. So even if you say I'm happy to care for 5 to 12-year-olds and you get a call to care for a 11-year-old, you can always say no if it's not the right time or if there are other circumstances contributing to that. So it's really important that carers are able to be open and honest with their agency about when you can and can't accept a child into your home. And many foster carers will take breaks for periods of time and then return to caring when they're ready. And some carers decide that a specific placement isn't right for their family for whatever reason. So your agency will help to support you through those decisions and make sure that every placement that you say yes to is going to be the right fit. I've mentioned family contact a few times and the importance of caring for children and keeping them connected to where they come from. Children in foster care will have a contact plan determined by their case plan or the children's court, and the child or young person's safety is always a priority within that. So each situation will be assessed differently, but the majority of children and young people in care will have contact with their family unless there's a very good reason not to. Most kids and young people in care will enjoy seeing their family, they'll get a lot out of it, and family contact is a really important way to keep them in touch with their culture, their community, and who they are and where they come from. Children in foster care might get a lot out of seeing a positive relationship between their carer and their families, and it's really important that you understand that your foster care agency will support you with that. So you don't have to manage that relationship all by yourself. You've got that support there to facilitate that positivity in whatever way is appropriate for that placement. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people, it's especially important that they have contact with their families and communities, especially if they're placed with a non-Aboriginal carer. Aboriginal children need to remain connected to their family and community to ensure a sense of belonging and development within their cultural identity. So if you are caring for an Aboriginal child, they will have a cultural care plan which ensures that they have access to everything they need to maintain those cultural connections and ties to their family and community. If anybody's interested in caring specifically for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, you can do that through what we call an ACCO, an Aboriginal Community Controlled Organisation, and they will support you with any training that you might need or any further learning to make sure that you're culturally safe to care for children from an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background. We're often asked if you receive a financial reimbursement to become a foster carer, and that's a great question considering the rising cost of living and everything that everyone's experiencing at the moment. But important to note that you do receive a care allowance if you are a foster carer. It's not a payment, but it is intended to contribute to the day-to-day expenses of caring. So things like food, clothing, basic personal items, transport, pocket money, entertainment, and things like that. As I said, it's not an income, so it is tax-free and is provided by the department, and it won't affect any means testing for other payments or any family tax benefits figures. In general, payments start around $400 a fortnight, and that's paid pro rata based on the number of nights that a child is in your care. And that payment increases with the age of the child or young person that's in your care as well, and the complexity of their needs. It sounds hard to calculate, but your agency will provide guidance and extra support when it comes to understanding the care allowance. And you can also read more information on the department website if you'd like to Google the foster care allowance. Does anybody have any questions that they would like me to answer before we wrap up? Doesn't seem like any are coming through, and that's okay. If you do have questions, you can always call us on 1800 013 088. I'll quickly run through a couple of other frequently asked questions, and then as I said, if you do have further questions after today, you can always give us a ring. So can you travel if you've got a child in your care? That's super important to people after the world has opened up again, and lots of people are planning trips. So it will depend on the care arrangement that you have with the child in your care. It is possible to travel interstate with a child in care if permission has been granted, but approvals are considered on a case-by-case basis. But if you do have a holiday booked in the future and you're still interested in becoming a foster carer, you can absolutely go through that registration process, and as I mentioned before, you can go on hold for periods of time as well. People often ask about fitting in training and things like that. We have lots of training available to registered foster carers, and oftentimes that's facilitated in a flexible manner. So after hours, after the kids are in bed, or over weekends, or online as well. So lots of ways that you can increase your skills and knowledge around foster care even after you are accredited. Sometimes people ask if you can be accredited with more than one agency. In Victoria, the answer to that is no. You'll be connected with one foster care agency who will manage your case once you're accredited. That is so that your agency can provide the best support possible for you. They will get to know you super well and build a really strong relationship with you. Although down the track, if you decide that you would like to work with a different agency, or if you move away from where you're currently living, you can change agencies down the track as well. So in summary, who should consider becoming a foster carer? I would hope everyone will at least consider it once in their lifetime, but it's really important that the community considers that Foster carers play an important part in our community. They have a really supportive role of vulnerable children and young people, and any single person can make an impact on a child or young person's life. We need foster carers in Victoria now more than ever. The need for foster care is growing, and the number of foster placements available is not. So if it's something you've ever thought about, something you'd just like to learn more about, or something you still have questions about, please give us a call. It's the only way you'll know if it's right for you. And foster care is incredibly flexible and can work around you and your lifestyle. So you can change your fostering style over the period that you do it, from respite to short term to emergency to long term, and it can be flexible around your lifestyle as well. It does take a village to raise children, and foster carers are a huge part of that village. So I hope that everyone watching today will consider commencing their foster care journey. We do record these sessions and we keep them posted on Facebook for later viewing, so if you've missed any parts of this today, you can access them later. But whether you're at the start of your journey and still full of questions, or you're ready to be referred to an agency and start that process, we're here to help. So you can call us on 1800 013 088 or visit fosteringconnections.com.au to learn more.